I, Llewellyn Drury, had been so absorbed in the fantastic story the old man read so fluently from the execrably written manuscript, and in the metaphysical argument which followed his account of the vision he had introduced so artfully as to lead me to think it was a part of his narrative, that I scarcely noted the passage of time. Upon seeing him suspend his reading, fold the manuscript, and place it in his pocket, I reverted to material things, and glancing at the clock, perceived that the hands pointed to bedtime. "Tomorrow evening," said he, "I will return at 9 o'clock. In the interim, if you still question any part of the story, or wish further information on any subject connected with my journey, I will be prepared to answer your queries. Since, however, this will be your last opportunity, I suggest that you make notes of all subjects that you wish to discuss." Then, in his usual self-possessed, exquisitely polite manner, he bowed himself out. I spent the next day reviewing the most questionable features of his history, recalling the several statements that had been made, remembering the humiliation I had experienced in my previous attempts to confute him. I determined to select such subjects as would appear the most difficult to explain, and to attack the old man with vehemence. I confess that notwithstanding my several failures, and his successful and constant elucidation, and minute details in regard to occurrences which he related, and which anticipated many points I had once had in mind to question, misgivings still possessed me concerning the truthfulness of the story. If these remarkable episodes were true, could there be such a thing as fiction? If not all true, where did fact end and fancy begin? Accordingly, I devoted the following day to meditating my plan of attack, for I felt that I had been challenged to a final contest. Late the next day I felt confident of my own ability to dispossess him, and in order further to test his power, when night came, I double-locked the door to my room, first with the key, and next with the inside bolt. I had determined to force him again to induce inert material to obey his command, as he had done at our first interview. The reader will remember that Professor Chickering had deemed that occurrence an illusion, and I confess that time had dimmed the vividness of the scene in my own mind. Hence I proposed to verify the matter. Therefore, at the approach of 9 o'clock the evening following, I sat with my gaze riveted on the bolt of the door, determined not to answer his knock. He gave me no chance to neglect a response to his rap. Exactly at the stroke of 9 the door swung noiselessly on its hinges. The wizard entered, and the door closed again. The bolt had not moved, the knob did not turn. The bar passed through the catch and back to its seat. I sprung from my chair and excitedly and rudely rushed past my guest. I grasped the knob, wrenched it with all my might. Vainly. The door was locked. The bolt was fastened. Then I turned to my visitor. He was quietly seated in his accustomed place, and apparently failed to notice my discomposure, although he must have realized that he had withstood my first test. This pronounced defeat at the very beginning of our proposed contest produced a depressing effect. Nevertheless, I made an effort at self-control, and seeing myself opposite, I looked my antagonist in the face. Calm, dignified, with the brow of a philosopher and the countenance of a philanthropist, a perfect type of the exquisite gentleman and the cultured scholar, my guest, as serene and complacent as though, instead of an intruder, he were an invited participant of the comforts of my fireside, or even the host himself, laid his hat upon the table, stroked his silvery, translucent beard, and said, "Well?" I accepted the challenge, for the word, as he emphasized it, was a challenge, and hurled at him, in hopes to catch him unprepared, the following abrupt sentence. "I doubt the possibility of the existence of a great cavern such as you have described. The superincumbent mass of earth would crush the strongest metal. No material known to man could withstand a pressure so great as would underlie an arc as large as you depict. Material would succumb even if the roof were made of steel." "Do not be so positive," he replied. "By what authority do you make this assertion?" "By the authority of common sense, as opposed to unrealistic hypothesis. You should know that there is a limit to the strength of all things, and that no substance is capable of making an arc of thousands of miles, which, according to your assertion, must have been the diameter of the roof of your inland sea." "Ah," he replied, "and so you again crush my facts with your theory. Well, let me ask you a question." "Proceed." "Did you ever observe a bubble resting on a bubble?" "Yes." "Did you ever place a pipe stem in a partly filled bowl of soap water, and by blowing through it fill the bowl with bubbles?" "Yes." "Did you ever calculate the tensile strength of the material from which you blew the bubble?" "No, for soap water has no appreciable strength." "And yet you know that a bubble made of suds has not only strength, but elasticity. Suppose a bubble of energy floating in space would be covered to the depth of the thickness of a sheet of tissue paper with the dust of space. Would that surprise you? No. Suppose two such globes of energy covered with dust were to be telescoped or attached together. Would you marvel at the fact? No. He drew a picture on a piece of paper in which one line was enclosed by another and remarked, "The pencil mark on this paper is proportionately thicker than the crust of the earth over the earth cavern I have described. Even if it were made of soapsuds, it could revolve through space and maintain its contour." "But the earth is a globe," I interjected. "You do not mean an exact globe?" "No. It is flattened at the poles." He took from his pocket two thin rubber balls, one slightly larger than the other. With his knife he divided the larger ball, cutting it into halves. He then placed one of the sections upon the perfect ball and held the arrangement between the glass light and the wall. "See, is not the shadow flattened as your earth is at the poles?" "Yes, but the earth is not a shadow." "We will not argue that point now," he replied, and then asked, "Suppose such a compound shell as this were to revolve through space and continuously collect dust, most of it of the earth's temperature, forming a fluid, water. Would not that dust be propelled naturally from the poles?" "Yes, according to our theory." "Perhaps," said he, "the contact edge of the invisible spheres of energy which compose your earth bubbles, for planets are bubbles, they have been covered with water and soil during the time the energy bubble, which is the real bone of the globe, has been revolving through space. Perhaps, could you reach the foundation of the earth dust, you would find it not a perfect sphere, but a compound skeleton, as of two bubbles locked, or rather telescoped together. Are you sure that my guide did not lead me through the space between the bubbles?" "No," he continued. "Do not be shocked at what I am about to assert, for as a member of materialistic humanity, you will surely consider me irrational when I say that matter, materials, ponderant substances, one and all, so far as the preponderance part is concerned, have no strength." "What? No strength? None whatever?" I grasped the poker. "Is not this matter?" "Yes." "I cannot break it." "No." "Have not I strength?" "Confine your argument now to the poker. We will consider you next." "You cannot break it." "I can break this pencil, though," and I snapped it in his face. "Yes." I curled my lip in disdain. "You carry this argument too far." "Why?" "I can break the pencil. I cannot break the poker. Had these materials not different strengths, there could be no distinction. Had I no strength, I could not have broken either." "Are you ready to listen?" he replied. "Yes, but do not exasperate me. I did not say that the combination you call a poker had no strength. Neither did I assert that you could not break a pencil. A distinction without a difference. You play upon words. I said that matter, the preponderant state of material substances, has no strength, and I say differently." He thrust the end of the poker into the fire and soon drew it forth red hot. "Is it as strong as before?" "No." "Heat it to whiteness and it becomes plastic?" "Yes." "Heat it still more and it changes to a liquid?" "Yes." "Has liquid iron strength?" "Very little, if any." "Is it still matter?" "Yes." "Is it the material of the iron, or is it the energy called heat that qualifies the strength of the metal? It seems to me that, were I in your place, I would now argue that absence of heat constitutes strength," he sarcastically continued. "Go on. Cool this red-hot poker by thrusting it into a pail of cold water, and it becomes very hard and brittle." "Yes." "Cool it slowly, and it is comparatively soft and plastic." "Yes." "The material is the same, is it not?" "Go on." "What strength has charcoal?" "Scarcely any. Crystallize it, and the diamond results." "I did not speak of diamond." "Ah! And is not the same amount of the same material present in each, a grain of diamond and a grain of charcoal?" "What is present in a grain of diamond that is not present in a grain of charcoal?" "Go on." "Answer my question." "I cannot." "Why does brittle cold zinc, when heated, become first ductile and then, at an increased temperature, become brittle again? In each case the same material is present." "I do not know, but this I do know, I am an organized being and I have strength of body." The old man grasped the heavy iron poker with both hands, and suddenly rising to his full height, swung it about his head. Then, with a motion so menacing that I shrunk back to my chair and cried out in alarm, seemed about to strike with full force my defenseless brow. "My God!" I shouted, "what have I done that you should murder me?" He lowered the weapon and calmly asked, "Suppose I had crushed your skull, where then would be your vaunted strength?" I made no reply, for as yet I had not recovered from the mental shock. Could you then have snapped a pencil? Could you have a broken reed? Could you even have blown the down from a thistle bloom? No. Would not your material body have been intact? Yes. Listen, said he. Matter has no strength. Matter obeys spirit, and spirit dominates all things material. Energy in some form holds particles of matter together, and energy in other forms loosens them. 'Tis this imponderable force that gives strength to substances, not the ponderable side of the material. Granite crushed is still granite, but destitute of rigidity. Creatures dead are still organic structures, but devoid of strength or motion. The spirit that pervades all material things gives to them form and existence. Take from your earth its vital spirit, the energy that subjects matter, and your so-called adamantine rocks would disintegrate and sift as dust into the intricacies of space. Your so-called rigid globe, a shell of space dust, would dissolve, collapse, and as the spray of a burst bubble, its preponderant side would vanish in the depths of force. I sat motionless. Listen, he repeated. You wrong your own common sense when you place dead matter above the spirit of matter. Atoms come and go in their ceaseless transmigrations. Worlds move, universes circulate, not because they are material bodies, but because as points of matter, in a flood of force, they obey the spirit that can blot out a sun or dissolve the earth as easily as can unlink two atoms. Matter is an illusion, spirit is the reality. I felt that he had silenced me against my will, and although I could not gainsay his assertions, I determined to study the subject carefully at my leisure. As you please, he interjected into my musings, but since you are so determined, you would better study from books than are written by authors who know whereof they write, and who are not obliged to theorize from speculative data concerning the interstructural earth crust. But where can I find such works? I do not know of any. Then, said he, perhaps it would be better to cease doubting the words of one who has acquired the knowledge to write such a book, or who has no object in misleading you. Still other questions arise, I said. Well, I consider the account of the intra-earth fungus intoxicant beyond the realm of fact. In what respect? The perfect loss of self that resulted immediately, in an instant after swallowing the juice of the fungus fruit, so that you could not distinguish between the real guide to your side and the phantom that sprung into existence, is incredible. An element of time is a factor in the operation of nerve impressions. Have you investigated all possible anesthetics, he asked. Of course not. Or all possible narcotics? No. How long does it require for pure prussic acid to produce its psychological action? I do not know. He ignored my reply and continued. Since there exists a relative difference between the time that is required for ether and chloroform to produce insensibility, and between the actions and resultant effects of all known anesthetics, intoxicants, and narcotics, I think you are hypercritical. Some nerve excitants known to you act slowly, others quickly. Why not others still instantaneously? If you can rest your assertion on any good basis, I will gladly meet your questions, but I do not accept such evidence as you now introduce, and I do not care to argue for both parties. Again I was becoming irritated, for I was not satisfied with the manner in which I upheld my part of the argument, and naturally, as is usually the case with a defeated party, became incensed at my invincible antagonist. Well, I said, I criticized your credulity. The drunkards of the drunkards' caverns were beyond all credence. I cannot conceive of such abnormal creations, even in illusion. Had I met with your experiences, I would not have supposed for an instant that the fantastic shapes could have been aught than a dream or the result of hallucination, while, without a question, you considered them real. You are certainly pressed for subjects about which to complain when you resort to criticizing the possibilities and creations of a mind under the influence of a more powerful intoxicant than is known to surface earth, he remarked. However, I will show you that nature fashions animals in forms more fantastic than I saw, and that even these figures were not overdrawn. Without heeding his remark, I interrupted his discourse, determined to have my say.